Do an internet search for best beginner ADV bike and you'll find an amazingly wide variety of answers. Everyone has an opinion and everyone's personal bike is obviously the best bike ever, even though they have zero experience with any of the other options. I'm not an expert, but I have ridden most and owned many of the bikes people suggest as good for ADV beginners, and there are definitely some features and criteria that make certain bikes better for mixed on and off pavement riding. Let's talk about the oft-suggested good beginner ADV bikes that I think you should avoid. Also, huge shout out and thank you to Quadlock for sponsoring this video. Before we jump into the list, a few things to consider just so you get an idea of my personal ADV bike philosophy. ADV bike in this instance means an off-road capable bike also suited for comfortable highway travel. New riders are often new mechanics as well, so I try to suggest newer bikes that can be counted on to be reasonably reliable and not need a bunch of fixes. 3, there are a ton of hidden expenses that come with jumping into bike ownership, and I strongly encourage new riders to get good gear because they're going to need it. So I tend to err on the side of cheaper bikes so that people have money left over to get gear, luggage, mods, upgrades, etc. I want to recommend bikes that you can grow into rather than out of. I don't want the bike to be the limiting factor as your skills improve and you want to tackle more difficult off-road riding. I also strongly believe that learning to ride off-road on a heavy bike is counterproductive and dangerous, so I will always point people toward the smallest bike that'll do what they want to do. And finally, if it were up to me, everyone would start on a small dual sport like a TW200 or a KLX 230. Something like that that's easy to maintain and even easier to pick up. That said, if you plan on doing half your riding on pavement and half off the pavement, then it can make sense to start with an ADV bike. If you're going that way, I want you at least to be pointed in the right direction. Here are 4 beginner ADV bikes that I think you should avoid. The Honda NX500/CB500X, the upcoming BMW 450 GS, the Kawasaki Versys-X 300, and oh, you guys are gonna hate me for this one, the KLR 650. I'll get into specifics in a moment, but most of these bikes, other than the KLR, have a few things in common. They have a 19-inch front wheel, many of them have cast wheels that aren't spoked, and a lot of them have limited clearance and suspension travel. Not bad, but definitely less than other ADV bike options. None of these things by themselves make a bike bad for off-road riding, and there are perfectly capable bikes out there with cast wheels and limited clearance. But combined, they make more difficult off-road sections harder than they need to be and increase your risk of damaging your bike or yourself. For me personally, it makes no sense to buy a bike with a 19-inch front wheel when you can buy one with a 21. The extra 2 inches makes a notable difference, that's what I told her, when rolling over rocks, logs, and ruts, but costs you almost nothing when you're riding on the street. None of us are Valentino Rossi. A 21-inch front allows me to corner as hard and fast as I want to or am able to. Cast wheels are less flexible and heavier and can literally shatter when you hit an obstacle at speed. I've seen this happen. They're not good for aggressive off-road riding. But more importantly than that, the inclusion of these features, and I use that term lightly, speaks to the design philosophy and intended use case of each motorcycle. Bikes with a 19-inch front are almost always street bikes first and off-road bikes second. If that's what you're after, then great. But for the way I see most adventure bikes being used, and in terms of future potential as you get more comfortable riding off-road, there are just much better options out there. None of the bikes here are bad per se, but they're not the best for what you're trying to do either. Adventure and dual sport bikes are the hottest segment in motorcycling right now and one of the only segments that are actively growing. So a lot of companies are slapping the adventure label on bikes that really aren't. Let's start with the Honda NX500, and I'm including the old outgoing CB500X in this as well because they're basically the same bike. First, specs. The Honda NX500 has a 471cc parallel twin motor, 47 horsepower, it weighs 432 pounds wet, 7.1 inches of ground clearance, 32.8-inch seat height, suspension travel of 5.9 inches in the front and 5.3 inches in the rear. The fuel capacity is 4.7 gallons and the MSRP is right around $7,400. Honda's website refers to the NX500 as an entry-level adventure motorcycle. This is a fantastic motorcycle. I've made multiple videos recommending both the NX and the CB, and I stand by that. But if you want a bike that's going to be great for 50-50 riding, well, there are just better options out there. Look at the front wheel. Cast wheel, 19 inches. Look at the front tire. Those are street tires with a little bit of sideways pattern that makes them off-road capable, in their opinion. It is possible to ride difficult terrain on one of these bikes. I'm not denying it. Our friend Grace lived off of hers and rode pretty much everywhere on it for a year. But For the same or less money, you can get a bike that's just as capable and comfortable on the road and more capable off-road. So what should you get instead? The Ibex 450 is almost $1,000 cheaper, it's just as light, and it has better ground clearance and suspension travel. If you're thinking about an NX500, I would encourage you to give the Ibex 450 a test ride. Unlike the bikes on this list, one thing I always recommend is the Quad Lock phone case and mount system for your motorcycle. Quad Lock has custom-made phone cases for almost every popular phone model, and they have stick-on adhesive mounts for phones that aren't on their list, which is not very many. You put your phone in the case and then you attach it to the mount on your handlebars, on your rearview mirror, on your fork stem, on the GPS bar on the front of your bike. Really, there are so many mounting options now on the Quad Lock website. You can attach it anywhere. I have mounts in all of my rigs as well. You can even get a desktop phone mount for charging. The case that you buy clicks into that mount and holds incredibly securely. You can move your bike by holding onto your phone. I have ridden with my phone on my bars in a Quad Lock mount in Death Valley. I've done multiple BDRs. I've crashed and rolled and ridden in the rain and done 1,000 things. I have put these cases through every test I can imagine, and I've yet to have one come off the bars. The vibration dampener ensures that your camera is not damaged while it's on the handlebars. I have had 0 camera problems in the freaking, 8 or 9 years now that I've been using Quad Lock cases. Quad Lock was one of the first companies that jumped on to sponsor this channel. I'm incredibly thankful to them, and I've enjoyed working with them for nearly a decade now. I wholeheartedly recommend their mounts and cases, and I will put a link in the description for you. If you're looking to add a phone or even a tablet to your motorcycle, Quad Lock is the best way to go, in my opinion. Link in the description, and thanks again to Quad Lock for sponsoring this video and the channel. The second beginner ADV bike that I don't recommend is the BMW 450 GS, which isn't out yet, but it's coming out this year, 2026. Let's run down the specs. Some are not confirmed, but this is the most information we have. They're already available to order in Europe, so a lot of this is accurate, but just grain of salt it because we don't know for sure what it's going to look like in the US. So the BMW 450 GS has a 420cc parallel twin motor. It's got 48 horsepower, it weighs 393 pounds wet, has approximately 7.5 inches of ground clearance. The seat height is 33.3 inches. Front and rear suspension travel is 7.1 inches. It has a fuel capacity of 3.6 gallons. And the price, we'll talk about the price in a second. The BMW 450 GS does have spoked wheels, though in Europe they're cast wheels, but on the website it says cast wheels not available in the US. But why only a 19-inch front wheel? It has very limited suspension travel and clearance, and it's a BMW, so it's going to be expensive. The United States price has not been announced, but the base model in the UK can be pre-ordered, and it's going for nearly 7,000 pounds. That is $9,600 US. $10,000 for the base model. That is a BMW. This is a side note and has nothing to do with the performance of this motorcycle, but they used a bunch of looking AI created backgrounds and pictures when they first announced the thing, and I really don't want to support that kind of behavior going forward. Not only is it not a bike I'd recommend, but I'm kind of annoyed with BMW in general right now. I have a ton of friends in the industry who are photographers and content creators who could have made you a fantastic promo. Why the hell did you make some garbage slop looking AI? But I digress. We don't know a lot about the 450 GS, but what I do know makes me think it's not going to be a bike that I'm going to recommend. So what should you get instead? Well, I would point you towards the KTM 390 Adventure R. The KTM will scratch the European bike itch and has all the technological goodies you expect from a BMW. It's also one of the most capable smaller ADV bikes out there, and the price is way better, not to mention you can go buy one right now. Number 3 beginner ADV bike that I don't recommend is the Kawasaki Versys-X 300. This is kind of a layup because there are a lot of reasons why this is obviously not a good first choice for an ADV bike, but people always bring it up in the comments, so I felt it was worth addressing. Let's talk about the specs. The Versys-X 300 has a 296cc parallel twin motor, 39 horsepower, it weighs 386 pounds, has 7.1 inches of ground clearance, the seat height is 32.1 inches, and the suspension travel is 5.1 inches in the front, 5.8 inches in the rear. Fuel capacity of 4.5 gallons, and a retail price anywhere from $5,800 to $6,200. This is another very good motorcycle. It's just not one I'd recommend for anyone wanting to do much off-road. It is tied for the least ground clearance and suspension travel on the list. It has a high-revving Ninja 300 engine that is fine at higher speeds, but it's not what I would call tuned well for off-road riding. Kawasaki at least has the sense to refer to it as a touring motorcycle on their site, so that's good. The Versys-X 300 has spoked wheels, which is good. The front is still 19 inches, not 21. So what should you get instead? Well, if you're gonna get a 300, go with the Honda 300L Rally. It's not as streety as the Versys-X 300, but it's closer than you'd think, and it's 1,000 times better on dirt. I studied it. I did a scientific study, peer-reviewed it and everything. It's 1,000 times better. And the last beginner ADV bike that I think you should avoid in 2026 is the Kawasaki KLR 650. Before you hit unsubscribe, I know, here is where I lose so much of my faithful audience. I love the KLR. Hear me out. First, specs. The KLR 650 has a 652cc single-cylinder engine with approximately 40 horsepower. Wet weight is anywhere from 460 to 490 pounds, depending on which model you get. There's a ground clearance of 8.3 inches, seat height of 34.3 inches, suspension travel of 7.9 inches in the front and 8 inches in the rear, 6.1 gallons of fuel capacity, and retails for approximately $7,000. Some of you are still reeling that this is on the list. You're saying things like, but Dork, you had one and you loved it. It's true, I did. My feelings about the KLR have not changed. It's still a classic, simple machine that can take you anywhere. The community is still one of the best in motorcycling. They're still some of the best used bikes you can get because they're bulletproof and have been around forever, so there are a ton of well-equipped ones on Marketplace just waiting to be snapped up and ridden literally until the end of time. But if we're talking new bikes, it's really showing its age. And yeah, I know it got fuel injection a few years ago. It's still showing its age. There are just much better options out there that do literally everything better. The KLR is heavy, tall, and has a very soft suspension. Other than the addition of fuel injection and ABS, the level of technology in the KLR is equivalent to an 87 Toyota with a 22 RE motor. Bulletproof, reliable, very capable, but lacking the refinements of the last 40 years. So what should you get instead? I have good news. If you want to buy a Kawasaki, you are in luck. You should think about the upcoming Kawasaki KLE 500. It has 20% more horsepower, similar suspension travel, weighs 30 to 40 pounds less, is loaded with far more modern features like smartphone connectivity, switchable ABS, an assist and slipper clutch, and it is cheaper depending on which model you get. I love the KLR as much as anyone, and I'm glad it is still around. But if you're shopping for your first ADV bike, the fact is there are just much better options available now. And then the fifth bike I'd like you to avoid is a lot of bikes all lumped into one, but any bike over 500 cc's. These bikes are just too heavy to learn on and have more power than you need, even if you're cruising all day on the highway. Smaller bikes are statistically safer and cheaper to buy and insure. Now, if your dream bike is an Africa Twin, there's nothing wrong with that, but I would suggest starting smaller, maybe an Africa Single, also known as the 300L Rally, and working up to it once you have the confidence and skill to commit that much heavier bike when riding difficult terrain. You have to have absolute confidence and just attack aggressively on a bike that big, and I just find new riders don't have that confidence quite yet. I've touched on the ADV bikes I do recommend for beginners in this video, but if you want to see the full list with explanations, check out my previous video, which I will link for you. Bike choice is subjective, and what works best for one person may not work at all for another. I'm as biased as any other rider out there, but I've ridden with, talked to, and even coached a large number of new ADV riders, and based on the trends I see, you're going to be better off in the long run if you avoid these 4 beginner ADV bikes. That said, if your dream is to own the new BMW 450 GS, well then don't let some dorky dip on the internet tell you otherwise. It'll still get you where you need to go, it's just going to be like 15% harder than it needs to be. Not insurmountable by any means, but definitely noticeable. Unless, of course, it's the only bike you've ever had, in which case you won't know the difference anyway. What beginner ADV bikes do you think are best? What bikes should people avoid as a first off-road machine? Let us know in the comments. Share your experiences and mistakes to help others avoid some of the frustration you've dealt with. Thanks again to Quadlock for sponsoring this video and the channel. Been working with them for almost a decade and hoping it lasts for another. If you haven't yet, consider subscribing to the channel for more ADV and dual sport motorcycle content, because I'm the dork in the road and I want to be your internet riding buddy. And I'm better than your regular riding buddies because I come with a mute button. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other. Thank you.
Excellent!